This is a super clamp. This is also a super clamp. They're two different super clamps, and you might be wondering, why am I talking about two different super clamps? What is interesting thing could that be, or there be about that? In fact, if you're new to the whole grip side of cinematography or photography, you might be wondering, why should you even care about super clamps at all? What is a super clamp? What does it do, and why do I need to know about them? If you're new to them, this is what a super clamp is. It is a clamp. It is arguably super. It has the ability to clamp onto a flat surface, so there is a removable wedge that is in this part of the shoe or foot. They clamp pretty comfortably to something that's up to 1/8 of an inch or 1/8 inches or 30 millimeters thick. Or you can pull the wedge out and you have a clamp that will clamp to a pipe very, very comfortably and securely. So when it comes to clamping to a pipe, these will clamp to anything that's between 1/2 inch and 2 1/8 inches, or 13 to 55 millimeters in diameter. Now, when clamped on to whatever you're clamping them to, these will hold between or around 33.7 pounds or 15 kilograms. That's what their maximum rated load is. Clamping is half of the battle. The other half of the battle is mounting things. And there are a couple of options to mount things when it comes to mounting things to the super clamp. So the first option is this socket here. This socket is designed to take a standard 5/8 inch stud or pin, or most of the super clamps come with one that looks like this. So it's hexagonal on the bottom, and that goes in there, and it prevents it from rotating. The clamp also, because remember, overhead, has a safety feature. The pin is locked in place even if you don't have the thumb screw tightened down the way it should be for mounting things. And this will work with regular 5/8 studs, and it'll also work with things like magic arms that also have a 5/8 stud on the bottom. So a lot of flexibility in what you can mount your clamp to. Now, that's not the only way you can mount to the clamp. There is also a 1/4-20 threaded socket here in the middle. So just use one of these studs to demonstrate, but you can thread a stud or screw a quick release plate or screw a piece of equipment or whatever to that 1/4-20 thread and mount things that way. You'll notice that there are also 4 extra holes around that 1/4-20 thread. 2 of them have threads and 2 of them don't. Those are so that you can take 2 super clamps, rotate them 90 degrees to each other, and bolt them together. These are M5 0.8 pitch 20 millimeter long cap head screws that go in there. They do sell super clamps already assembled that way. They do sell the screws as if you want them you want official like Manfrotto branded screws. So that's a super clamp. Now, why am I talking about these 2 super clamps? Well, I wanted to make a video to talk about these 2 clamps because there is some pretty important differences as far as I'm concerned between the 2 of them. So I'll start with this one. This is the granddaddy of super clamps. This is made by Manfrotto. They were the first manufacturer, as I understand it, to make super clamps, and this is the most copied Manfrotto product ever made. So there are tons of manufacturers out there that make these now. Manfrotto is just the beginning. Now, there is not a lot to say about these. They are age-old, they're reliable, they work, they do the job. They're pretty well built, they're pretty well finished. They're pretty good. The biggest pro that I wanted to talk about with the Manfrotto ones has to do with this wedge. So this wedge is a hard plastic. When you put it in the jaw, it's nice and firm and doesn't give when you're clamping down on it. But more importantly, when you take the wedge out of the jaw to use it as to clamp to a pipe, you need a place to put the wedge. Now, fortunately, the wedges are replaceable. You can buy them as a replacement part. They're about $250, $260 a piece. They're like 4 for $10 or $4 for $11 roughly. But you obviously you don't want to spend tons of money on wedges if you can keep them. And the neat thing about the way Manfrotto has designed their wedges is that you can snap them to the screw that holds the pin in place, and that will hold the wedge on the back of your clamp whenever you're done with it. Now, while I like the wedges, I have some problems with these clamps from a purely practical perspective. They're 40 bucks a pop, which is a lot of money, honestly. And if you're anything like me, once you've bought a super clamp, you're going to buy many super clamps. As soon as I had one, I quickly found about 10 uses for it and didn't have 10 of them. And I have, in the last 6 months, bought 5 of these already. I probably will buy more. All 5 of the ones, with the exception of the 2 that I am using in this video, are actually in use holding things up. So the cost is a problem. The other problem that I have with these is the handle. Not the design as a whole. They do make clamps with little T-handles as opposed to this lever handle. I like the lever handle. It gives you something to really make sure you get a reasonable amount of leverage when you lock the clamp to something. But what this handle doesn't do is it does not allow you to change its position without loosening or tightening the clamp. So if I just crank down on the jaw, you'll see the handle sticks off to the side. Maybe that's fine and it doesn't get in the way and I don't care, or maybe the way the handle ends up, it's like sticking out this way and that could end up catching something or catching on something. So it would be nice to have a repositionable handle. And that's where this other clamp comes in. So this is manufactured by Impact. It weighs about the same. The handle on this Impact clamp is a little bit longer, and it is metal, where the Manfrotto's is plastic, and it ratchets. So that's the big deal. So again, clamped down, you can see the handle is pointed off in a weird angle, but I can just pull the handle out and rotate it to any of a number of positions to get it out of my way, or to get it in an angle where I can pull on it to either tighten or loosen the clamp if I need the better leverage. On top of that, these are 20 bucks a pop. The Manfrotto's 40. So that's a big difference in price. Now, the one downside to these really comes down to that wedge that the clamp uses for clamping onto straight things. It's not as well built as the Manfrotto. The good news is, if you happen to buy Impact clamps, their wedges and the Manfrotto wedges are completely compatible in terms of being able to both put them in the jaw and, more importantly, be able to put them on the set screw or thumb screw to store the wedge when you're not using it. So, super clamps, 2 different models. My recommendation, obviously, go out, take a look at what's out there. You may want the T-handle ones. I don't have any because I've never had a use for them. Never seen any specific need for them specifically, so I've never bought any to try. The one recommendation I will make is, if you can get the clamps that have ratcheting handles, get the clamps with ratcheting handles. It's not necessary most of the time. It's certainly not necessarily all the time, but it is a nice feature to have. And given that you can get these Impact clamps for half the price of these Manfrotto clamps, it's a nice feature to have, and it saves you money to go in that direction. With that said, I hope you found this useful. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.